After a very fruitful session last time with archaeologist Disha Ahluwalia, we received a lot of messages and questions that people had regarding deeper details about the Harappan civilization, its script, everyday life of the people, and its possible links with later people in the subcontinent. So we had to get Disha back on our platform to answer the curious minds of our audience. Welcome back, Disha.
Thank you so much for having me on a platform again.
So there were a lot of questions coming in from the last session, and so today we'll also take some questions towards the end from the audience, and they'll be given a chance to be on the screen with you as well, and they can ask their questions to Disha themselves. So Disha, let's start from the beginning about the Harappans. We had a lot of questions about the origin of the Harappans. We know that there are various theories that have been proposed by various historians and archaeologists about the Aryan invasion theory or theory of indigenous origin. So, which theory do you subscribe to, or the majority of historians and archaeologists actually subscribe to?
With regards to Harappan civilization and the Harappans, a lot of people have propounded a lot of different theories, right? Right from the beginning, be 1920s, 30s, people have been trying to understand who were the Harappans and from where this Harappan culture originated. And in that, in the midst of all that debate, the to and fro, a lot of other components, such as the whole issue with the Aryans, have propelled in or have come into the picture. And initially, when Harappans, studies were, quite new, and few sites were being excavated, and slowly and steadily the progression was being made in Harappan archaeology. People thought that post Harappan, the moment Harappan civilization disintegrates or disappears from the scene, there is a proposed dark age. That is the period from 1500 all the way till the rise of Mahajanpadas. There is nothing in between. There are no archaeological cultures. And this was supported by some people who propounded the theory of migration. Initially, it was invasion. People propose that there is Aryan invasion, but that invasion theory itself is now disregarded even by those who have proposed the theory initially. So those who keep on repeating this term, they should know that this particular theory is no longer in use. It was, however, replaced by another theory, which was Aryan migration theory. Now, migration is a very common aspect of us Homo sapiens, right? We migrate all the time, be it for work, be it for family, be it for anything. There are different reasons why we migrate, right? I migrated from Delhi to now I'm in Gujarat, and my grandfather migrated from Lahore to Delhi, and then before that, you never know, from maybe from Gurdaspur to Lahore, there was a migration. So slowly, on a smaller scale also, and also on a larger scale, there has been migration. We always migrate. But what that theory suggested, that at a particular period of time, a certain group of people who come under this umbrella of Aryan have migrated to the subcontinent, and then they led to the rise of the second urbanization or second civilization, which is now in a different geological zone, which is the Ganga plain. So that was the whole, this what happened way back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, because back then there were not much evidence, and initially even archaeologists, including Professor B.B. Lal, were victim of this very notion. And I remember reading somewhere in one of Professor Lal's paper where he said that he was also a victim of colonization and that colonial mindset, where he went with his guru, the Mortimer Wheeler, and went and said that the invasion happened and then the migration happened. But whereas we don't find archaeologically any evidence as such. Now, when I say
Disha, so back then, when the colonial times, during the colonial times, on what basis did these colonial historians actually propose the theory of invasion or migration?
See, it was based on the literary texts also. The references that, because the Indology became a very important aspect. So the people, they couldn't understand our language, so they decided that they couldn't find much of written record as opposed to what you would find in other places, and they decided that to rule over these people we need to know the history. So some curious officials, they started to look into these texts, the ancient texts, and that's how Indology basically started. We all know the history. I will not go in detail, with the Asiatic Society and etc. All of that basically was the beginning of, investigating into India's past through its ancient texts. Not archaeology, but through its ancient texts. However, archaeological investigation is totally different, right? But so by looking at these various texts, they propounded that since there is a gap archaeologically, it could be filled by this particular narrative in the text, which suggests that people have a group of people have migrated from the west, and they are the ones who basically established themselves in the Ganga valley, and that where the second urbanization flourished. And that is the region where later on Patliputra and other big cities and republics came up, and it became the part of political and cultural center. Example is the great empire of Magadha. And these were the way initially the thinking of those people, because there was a dark age. They suggested that there has to be no other explanation but a proposed migration. But today we know that archaeologically we have enough data and dates to suggest that there is no dark age. There is no gap in chronology of North India. I will only talk about the northern half of India. I will not, like when I'm talking about this, I'm just talking about the north right now. There is no archaeologically, there's no gap. There seems to be a continuity in different regions, different, characteristics continued, and then they were subjected to change, and transformation has happened slowly and steadily. We know this now. But the question always came up that if Harappan civilization, be it one of the ancient civilization and such a unique civilization with so much to that it has given to the world, be it drainage system, be it artificial irrigation, rainwater harvesting, town planning, you have evidence of beautiful art, even the script. Where did all this go? What happened to all this? Because none of these aspects, these small traditions we see being carried forward later on. And this is why people suggested that perhaps the next culture that follows in the northern half, that is the painted grayware culture, they were the ones who have come from west, and then they migrated with this beautifully crafted gray pottery, and then slowly they moved it towards the Ganga Yamuna Dwar, where it flourished. This was the whole thinking or the theory or the mindset behind creating the chronology, or sort of linking or filling up the gaps in the chronology. But we know now today that we don't have enough evidence to link PGW to the Western grayware. Enough studies have happened, a lot of evidence have been excavated. We know that beyond Bhavalpur, you don't find painted grayware. The quality and the fabric, the ones we find in the Indian subcontinent, and therefore we know that perhaps the migration was not west to east. There is a possibility that that is an indigenous ceramic type which evolved and originated within the subcontinent, somewhere in the subcontinent. So there has been a lot of shift, and I think a lot of shift is also due to the fact that with every excavation, new results have come into picture. And as we go on, we never know tomorrow what side will yield what evidence, and that could sort of answer a major question. So this whole debate of a group of people coming from the west, migrating in large numbers, and especially they were horse riders. There's another question, there's another archaeological blank that was used in this narrative, were the horse. They were the chariot riders, they were the horse riders, and they were coming from steppe, and then they migrated to the Indian subcontinent, and then they introduced horses and chariots in the Indian on the Indian landscape, and that's how you have chariots. So see, there were various other components that play role in this particular theory. You have horses, you have chariots, you have even the script, your religion, because a lot of people would question that during Harappans we don't find evidence of a temple or some sort of religious activity, but later on we do find. So the religion also have come from West, from Central Asia all the way to Indian subcontinent. The Vedic gods have been introduced, but I don't believe in that aspect, and I wouldn't say that I believe in the opposing theory, which is out of India theory. So when I say I don't believe that a mass migration happened, what I mean is that I do not believe that only at a one particular period of time, one particular group has migrated. Migration is happening irrespective of any time bracket. Be it 1100 BCE, 1500 BCE, or 2600 BCE, or even before that, migration is happening irrespective of any time bracket. So we should not be constricting ourselves within these time brackets, right? And also later on, migrations have happened. We have so many other, Central Asian powers coming to India also. And then you have even till the medieval period. Even today, the migration is an ongoing process. You cannot put a time span on it. You cannot say from this period to this period, a particular group migrated. On the other side of the prism, there is another group which says that the people have migrated from India to West, and they are the ones who are responsible for the Central Asian culture, especially which links Central Asia to the Indian subcontinent. I don't believe in that either, because we don't have evidence for either two of the opposing theories. We don't have evidence for any of this. What I believe and what most of us would believe is that the evidence so far suggests that there are different shades of gray. Nothing is black or white. So we need to understand that it's a very complex thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing with people. We're dealing with the culture that people are responsible in changing and transforming. Culture is not changing on its own, right? People are the ones who are giving impetus to this change. So we need to understand.
When we talk of evidence, what kind of evidence are we talking about here? When we say that there is a trajectory that is going on and multiple migrations are taking place. So can you help us understand the evidences and help us understand the chronology? That is there archaeological evidence that says that during this time probably this is what was happening around in this time when these people migrated, or any sort of evidence?
Yeah, we have very broad chronology, and I think in my previous video I did discuss about Harappan chronology, but what I didn't discuss was the periodization, the broader periodization that has come up in use today. So what periodization basically means is combining various aspects in terms of their relatedness in time and space, right? The things that are related to each other, they have been put together in one bracket, and therefore the periodization has happened. And I am talking in terms of the Harappan civilization and the post-Harappan civilization over here. Long back, George Wiley and Philip Phillips came up with this model where they basically took the concept of cultural historical integration. It was a concept where relatedness, the aspects or distribution of relatedness over time and space was analyzed or was considered. This particular concept and model was adopted by Jim Schaffer and and Diane when they came up with the periodization of early producing era, which is the pre-Harappan era. Then came the regionalization era, integration era, followed by the localization era. So these basically eras are defined by the various practices that have been happening in these time frames, and also how the culture is slowly progressing and changing and diffusing with each other. Now, early farming producing era is akin to the site called Mehergarh, where about 7500 BCE, the farming sort of has started. You have this beginning of agriculturalism and also pastoralism, right? Followed by regionalization era, where there are different regional characteristics are coming up. So when Jim Sheffer was working in the Indus belt, he noticed that there are various regional characteristics within traits or traditions within South Asia, which people, the locals, they adapt to the various regional, these traits. And even today in India also, you can easily see that from region to region, if you travel by road, right, you will see a lot of these small regional local traditions that are in place, right, which are adopted by people and are still in use. So same concept was sort of noted in the archaeological context, where regional characteristics within the Harappan tradition. So he came up with this notion of Harappan tradition. He emphasized that there is a Harappan tradition, and within that there is, different eras. We have sites like Kotiji, Nal, Amri, all of them, which are basically part of the regionalization era. Now, integration as a term suggests that there were regional, sites, regional cultures. They were integrated by third millennium BCE, by 2600 BCE, under the Harappan traditions. They were unified or integrated together. Like how
So what you're saying is that there were certain regions that were there, and then they got unified or integrated into what we know as Harappan civilization.
Harappan traditions.
Tradition, right? Okay.
Harappan traditions, because civilization, as I explained previously, also is a very broad term. So Harappan tradition, the Harappan culture that we all know, with town planning, brick size, weight, script, blah blah blah, all of that was part of the integration era.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. So all of these parameters, that I've just listed out, and I list out again. You have Harappan script, weights and measures, town planning, drainage system, the brick size, the beads, the carnelian beads. All of that was integrated under the umbrella of Harappan tradition or Harappan culture. Later on, when about 1900 BCE, this integration started to break down and gave rise to local cultures again.
Okay? There was a full circle taking place.
So this is what has happened. And even today, it happens like that also. We come full circle, be it small things, small examples, things that we use in our kitchen. Now everybody is now going back to their, bajra and other sort of, they're leaving behind the cereals, and they want to eat healthy. So the healthy thing is what? They eat bajra, jowar, ragi. They will resort to all of that. The gluten-free diet is nothing but we coming back to full circle in a very small, it's a very small aspect, but it is true. Right? The food habit also coming back to full circle. A lot of things coming back to full circle, but a lot of things can't come back to full circle because we are evolving, we are transforming, we are moving ahead. Our way of living has changed. Now we don't most of us no longer live in Harappan type of houses, but then you see the city of Chandigarh. It has a lot of reminiscence in terms of the grid, the way it's been gridded to the Harappan cities. Even the city of Chandigarh is gridded. That is what Harappans have done way back. So there are some resonance to the past, and then also we are manifesting future as well as we go forward. The same thing has happened in the past as well. And once the localization era slowly and steadily diffused to, gave rise to a new culture, and also rise to a new metal, which is iron. Gregory Poschel, who worked extensively at Harappan civilization, he came I find this very interesting. He came with another term called the Indus Age. Now, what he meant by Indus Age was he included everything right from early Harappan period all the way to the use of Iron Age under this bracket. He called it an Indus Age because same thing, everything has to come to a full circle. So with the rise of with the use of iron and everything, the Indus Age comes to an end with that. But within this, the head of Indus Age, there are various other cultures and various other parameters that we see in archaeologically. So things have progressed and diffused. So if I talk about chronology, we know that the early farming started somewhere about 7,500 BCE. That gave rise to the regionalization era, which is the early Harappan sites, which such as Kot DG, etc. And then comes the mature Harappan period or integration period, and then comes the late Harappan or localization era, and followed by painted grayware culture. And then you have, along with that, you have NPPW and other archaeological cultures. So therefore, there is no break in the chronology today.
So when we talk about painted grayware here, can we also relate that culture to the Vedic age? Because a lot of people are curious about the Vedic age and how that, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
Please go on.
No, sorry, you can continue.
No, the question is that because last time also we talked about how there's lack of archaeological evidence for the Vedic age, right? So, but if there are any, could you please put some light on it?
Yeah, I will start by saying that when we add age or terms like age, era, period, we are basically constricting or sort of delimiting it within a time span. When we say an age starts and has to end somewhere, right? But whereas cultural traditions usually don't follow the same time span or those brackets, right? Vedic traditions and Vedic age are the two different things altogether. If you look at from this perspective, एज का मतलब है कि 1500 BC से लेके certain age period तक वो वैदिक एज चल रहा है, मतलब from 1500 onwards till about 400 500 whatever, this particular age is ongoing and then it ends, right? And when you talk about Vedic culture, Vedic traditions, more or less, Vedic tradition means a tradition were used, these traditions were followed at different time span also. There is a possibility. So for me, I would rather personally focus on Vedic traditions than go on and talk about Vedic age, because the age that were given in historicity, in historical studies, in history books, they do not very well go, perhaps may or may not go with the archaeological chronology, right? So the Vedic traditions are something different. Now, we all know that like painted grayware came up, it was sort of given a name in a period where India was trying very hard to find its ancestry. With Mohenjo-daro and Harappa being part of Pakistan now, there were many projects that were initiated by the government, and one of the project was to understand the historicity of the epics. And in that, when Professor Lal excavated Hastinapur, he gave PGW a recognition in terms of the stratigraphical position. So although at Ahijatra it was first found, but the identity, or it was given an identity during the excavation of Hastinapur, and post then it has really been an interesting part of archaeological assemblage, cultural material assemblage. And Professor Lal initially linked it to Aryan migration, and also suggested that it is part of the later Vedic period. So he did link it to later Vedic period. But then, and then also later on, he came and suggested very recently that Harappans and Rigvedic people are the two sides of the same coin. So if we look at the whole progression and chronology, somewhere or the other, there are a lot of work to be done when we talk about the later Vedic period, or we talk about the Rig Vedic and Harappan's connection. There's a lot of work to be done in that regard. But yes, of course, the reason why he linked it to Vedic period was because the sites that he has excavated, the kind of evidence that he has got, such as the use of iron, and the sites are more or less now in Ganga plain, and also linking it to the Mahabharata was one of the reasons, important reasons why he linked it to later Vedic period, right? And when he linked Harappans to the Rig Vedic period, he suggested few things. One was the geographical area. So for both the theories, Lal Sahab has most probably emphasized on the geographical span. Okay. So the Mahabharata, the Kuru Panchal region, so wherever the sites had PGW in the Kuru Panchal region came together, and he suggested that PGW is linked to Mahabharata. With the Rig Veda, the geographical area of the Rig Vedic people and Harappans coincides, in space. Second was the type of towns or cities that are mentioned in the Vedic period. They are very much similar, according to him, to the Harappan cities, the town planning, so on and so forth. The kind of life people are living, the stratification, not on the basis of caste, but on the basis of occupation, the work-wise stratification that one get to see, some remnants of it, which we get to see outside. Another thing was the worship of fire. Okay, and although we don't have much of direct evidence, but there are upsidal fire altars, and we know that they were belief. They had certain belief, and they were using fire. Fire worship was an important aspect. So these are the few things which made Professor Lal link it to the Rig Vedas, the Harappan and Rig Veda together.
So we, as you mentioned earlier, also that Harappan civilization lacked religious institutions as such, because even R.S. Sharma points out that there were no temples in that age. So how do we know that this religious worship that was taking place of fire or the Soma plant, because a lot of the Aryan religion is based around the Soma plant as we know it. So how do we link it? And also because we know that history and archaeology, there are a lot of revisions taking place. What we knew 50 years back is completely changed now. So can we actually dismiss the whole idea of any links with the Harappans and the Rig Veda people or the Vedic people?
I will not see. One of the things that we all need to understand is that we are looking at past from the present lens. Right? What is religion? We call something religion, might not be religion for them, right? For them, it might be something else. Similarly, we call them Harappans, but their identity might be totally different from what we are calling them, right? So whenever we excavate anything, we bring past to the present, and we always look at that particular object from the present's perspective. There is another branch of study called ethno-archaeological study, which means that ethnography and archaeology sort of combines, where we're looking at present day society, trying to understand the past. There are pros and cons in doing so. The pros is that there are certain traditions which are ongoing, and it helps us to understand things better. But the other side, of the fence, what we see is that there is a lot of limitation in this particular linking, because we don't know how things were. Today we have a religion which is quite defined. It is a defined religion. We know that in forms we are asked what religion do we follow in school or colleges or any admission, any job. But religion has an evolution itself. It starts with belief. And what is belief? Believing in afterlife. That is going on from the prehistoric time. We have now evidence, even the Neanderthals had some belief in afterlife. There is evidence of burial even then, right? So that belief is something which is very part of being human. This entire evolution, we see that this belief somewhere or the other initially begins with a fear, with wanting something also. And initial worship, we all know, have started with these environment elements: fire, rain, wind, because these were unpredictable factors which humans could not control. They could kill animals, but they can't control wildfire, right? They can build houses, but they can't control flash floods when there's heavy rainfall. So when you can't control, you have this fear in your head. And there is always a concept of reward and punishment that is going on, that slowly and steadily it comes up, that maybe we have done something, so we have to now repay. And it sort of got aggravated when people started living a sedentary life with the rise of agriculture. So religion basically begins with belief, and then today we have this very confined sort of, under the four walls, this definition of what religion is. But initially, back in antiquity, I don't think that was the case. I think it was in incipient phase. It was still evolving, and we know that the Harappans had some belief. We know that. We know that they believe in, perhaps rituals, because when they're burying dead, with a lot of burial goods, right? Also, there are fire altars, so we know that they have certain belief. Perhaps also uh, attesting that certain supernatural belief to animals. You look at the seals. There is evidence of fire altars in the seals also. So just because they don't have built heritage, just because they don't have temples, which are very later in evolution. So initially it starts off with small altars, and then it sort of became much more evolved temple architecture style. It's part of evolution. So what R.S. Sharma suggested, that just because Harappans did not have big temple structures, or they did not find, because they don't want to see certain evidence, it's not correct at all. We do find evidence of belief. Now you want to put that in a color, in certain bracket, on certain a timeline or certain definition. It's all up to people. It's subjective, because we're bringing the evidence in the present, and people usually see it from different perspectives. So it's quite an
Well,
open-ended thing.
right. I also wanted to ask, we know that marine archaeologists found Dwarka, the city of Dwarka, Beet Dwarka. So what are the implications of this finding? What have we actually come to know about from this finding? And links with the evidence of Dwarka is very important to the Mahabharata. So
Yeah. So I'm currently writing a book on this particular topic, specifically the works on the epic. And
right.
when I started working on this particular topic, and I remember I was talking to my editor, and we had many conversations around how to put these points across to people without being labeled under any definition. We, call anything. So it was a very big task, and took me about 2 years to find a middle ground. See, Dwarka, of course, is a city which is linked to the Mahabharata, linked to Krishna, Lord Krishna. Even Mathura. If you have visited Mathura, if not gone to Dwarka, you would know what I'm talking about. The cult, the Vasudeva cult, the worship of Krishna, the belief in him is so strong in that particular city, in Mathura, Vrindavan, the entire Braj, that you cannot have a conclusive answer to such strong belief. Saying that this is a city or this is not a city will be not correct, because the belief of the people is very strong. However, as an archaeologist, my job is to be true to the facts and the material culture also. So Dwarka was excavated extensively, to nahi, but it has been excavated. There have been various seasons of excavation, and Professor Dr. S.R. Rao was the one who gave an extensive statement suggesting that he has found Krishna's Dwarka. Right? He was the one who came out, and he said that he has found Krishna's Dwarka, and the evidence that he has found has he likes to believe that they have finally found the Dwarka that was submerged as per the narrative of the epic, the Mahabharata. And but see, archaeologically, when you look at it, what do you find there, right? The palaces, there's still this question of where are the palaces. This evidence it does not clear the doubt whether or not there were palaces or not, or this is a big humongous, the description of Dwarka is quite elaborate in the Mahabharata. It's very elaborate, so we don't find such elaboration in the archaeological context. I'll tell you a personal example. I was excavating Barnava in 2018 19. In the month of January, we started excavation, and Barnava is a site which is the Varnavat of Mahabharata. And people thought that we are going to find the Lakshagriha because there is this narrative that is attached to the site where Pandavas, along with the mother Kunti, they escape the fire of Lakshagriha. So there was a conspiracy of murder by Kauravas, and then they escaped with the help of Vidur, and their tunnel was built so that they could go towards Hindon, and then they are in disguise for a year. This particular episode is there recorded in the Mahabharata, and people thought we're going to find that particular tunnel when we're excavating deep. But that's not what you find. What you find at site are the piles and piles of ceramics, wattle and daub structures, bits and pieces of antiquity. That's what you find. And your job as an archaeologist is to basically forget about the gods and goddesses and the glorified characters, and think about the people who have been living at that particular spot. So with the Dwarka also, a lot of evidence is there which pushed the antiquity of Dwarka about 2100 BCE, which is about mature Harappan period. It does push the antiquity of Dwarka to that level. There are evidence, of course, of an ancient city that has been submerged. But one needs to understand that there is an evolution of a site, just as evolution of culture. So there is this stratification of site which has stayed in continuous occupation over the period of time. Similarly, in the case of Dwarka, there is submergence, then in a separate corner, another settlement has come up. And then again, a big settlement have come up. And today you have Dwarka is now a city known for the temple and everything that is related to Lord Krishna. But for me, I will always look at it from first as an archaeologist perspective, and then look at it from the lens of the epic, and also acknowledge the fact that it is regarded and it's very close to a lot of people's heart, Dwarka as a city. But underwater archaeology needs a lot of work. We don't have much evidence because working underwater requires a lot of skills, extra skills which are not what you need when you're excavating on generally inland. But underwater you need to understand that there are various other factors that can go against you. The evidence might not be as static as you think.
Right. Moving a bit away from the topic that we have at hand, you talked about how it is difficult to find a middle ground while you're researching about a particular thing that is, closely linked to the, let's say, the emotions and opinions of the people or of the nation. So how you as an archaeologist have faced difficulties, coming to this middle ground, and why do you think that people in India or India as a nation is so politically charged with or opinionated with events that happened years and thousands of years ago?
I think it all started, as I said, when post 1947, the first job was to find its prehistoric roots. Because now the biggest cities that were ever excavated in the Indian subcontinent were
I think that was also happening when the national historians, even before independence.
Before that, yeah.
Right, it happened.
Before that as well. And post that, like, you can see there is this trend where people test their own identity, to these various, narratives of the past. And in terms of the texts that we have, they have to have that link. They always find that link. I'm writing about the epic also for my work. And it's very interesting that for thousands of years, for thousands and thousands of years, the story has been passed on generation after generation as if it is our inheritance, right? So something which has stayed alive in the minds of the people will always say ki, of course it's not fiction, it has to be some truth, there has to be some truth. And of course there has to be some truth, because even the work of fiction is based on something. The Game of Thrones also have some the researcher has gone as some links to to something that has happened. Every work of fiction have some resonance to what has truly happened. So beyond the glorification is what we need to go as historians. And what we find is that we look at the evidence, but what people want us to look at are things which go beyond the evidence. And that is where the problem is. Nothing is conclusive in archaeology. People want conclusive answers.
Right.
That is another very big problem. I can't tell you that it is the Krishnas Dwarka or the people's Dwarka. I am now confused in that particular, weighing the two, weighing the evidence in a scale. And I can't tell you this because I don't want to hurt people, and I don't want to say something which is not true. So as a young archaeologist, a young researcher, it is very difficult to say things out loud openly. And I remember recently I was talking to one of the senior archaeologists, and I was like, I think this is the reason why people, the senior archaeologists, they never opened their mouth and said things 100%. They did not give the 100%. They just said one sentence, they gave one loose end to people, and then they just backed off. And I was like, maybe that they were right in doing so, because the more you tell people, the more the more information is there available online, the more confusion it creates, because the right information is not online. People need to understand that archaeology cannot be religious in nature. It is very difficult for archaeology to be religious, but unfortunately, it has been plagued by ongoing trends where the whole Hindutva and other factors have come to play, have started to play a role in manipulating the data, which is quite alarming.
Even when we talk about not just the opinions of the right wing or the right of the political scenario, even the left does not, back down. They also have counterpoints and say like, oh, this is not possible. Like, what are you even talking about? But how are they dismissing? What are they basing their dismissal on? Do they actually have evidence of, okay, this is not at all possible? Because as you said, we cannot give conclusive answers to anything at all. So what is the solution to all this?
A lot of things on both sides, the right or left, is based on conjecture. Let me tell you this. Both sides. They might be choosing different points. That's a different story altogether, but they are basing a lot of things on conjecture. And conjecture is an enemy when it comes to any sort of research. We usually do not want to go into conjecture, because once we do, it's limitless, right? So the problem with the left is that they want to prove, they want to stick to the stand, and the stand they know is shaky. Whereas right is choosing to stand on the ground, which is because of the today's present scenario, for them it's not that shaky, whereas they have evidence. On both sides, it's a lot of conjecture. The reality is very, I remember when we made chariots public, the evidence of chariot public, the left were so like they were the ones who went and said, this is not chariots, it's a cart.
Nice.
It's a cart. By looking at a picture, because we were still writing the report, and we submitted the report last year, but without looking at the report and the evidence, just by looking at a picture on a news channel or on Google, they said it's a cart, because they undermine an archaeologist's hard work in the field. Whereas I can tell you that we can't create something on site. We can't create. When you create something, it's caught. red-handedly by people. You can't prove it in academia. You can't prove it in the, in the archaeological circles across the globe, because people will pick it up. People are smart. The academicians, they are smart. They will pick it up. So you can't do this. And there were a lot of students who came to me, young interns, and they were like, so and so said that it's a cart, it's not a chariot. And that person has not even come to see the chariots, not even come to the site, might have not even asked the excavator the details, or why he thinks a chariot, why he thinks it's a cart. So the healthy debate is not even a question. People just have the liberty to just go and say anything that they want without even relying on the facts, because they want to prove their point. Like when with this particular topic, there was a paper that was published a few months immediately after the press conference in Sinauli, where the chariots were linked to the Aryan migration immediately, because they can't now they can't let their theories go.
Right.
Their hard work go in waste. So they will do everything, to tailor made the evidence to suit their own agenda. And it's happening on both sides. It's not just one side or the other side. It's happening on both sides. There is a lot of conjecture, and that's what scares me the most. A lot of misinformation in social media.
I'm so sorry, my internet got disconnected. This does not usually happen. Am I audible?
Hi.
Am I audible? I'm so sorry, my internet got
Yeah,
disconnected.
yeah, I'm audible. I'm audible.
Uh, I was just asking that how do professionals like you then fare amidst all this charged opinions?
Um, it is very difficult to like, at times I feel like I am working to not do my work, but to justify people's opinion, or to satisfy their curiosities, or to make them happy. That happens when you are on social media and you are constantly interacting with people from different backgrounds, different opinions, different perspective, different political inclinations, all of that. Makes me feel that I'm not working for myself. You know and I'm working for them. I'm doing it so they get an answer. But that is something which I have come to realize I should not be doing it. And every time I am writing, I am constantly reminding myself, Disha, you are not writing a book for Twitter. You're writing a book so that
Right.
people get, correct information, a more logical perspective, and more archaeological perspective, which is needed. So it is very, very important. You have to be very careful in what you say and how you say it, because nobody likes controversies. Nobody likes to be targeted for no reason. So you have to be very careful. And I have come to learn by working with senior archaeologists over the years the trick to deal with certain things. And I think with experience with working on site and meeting people of different, with different perspective, it just gives you a sort of sense of what to say and when to say. There is no
Right.
definition, there's no way of doing so. You just learn as you go.
Coming back to the Harappan civilization, there are a lot of artifacts of animals, and there are artifacts resembling a bull, but we do not have any artifacts, or do we have artifacts that resemble a cow? Because mostly there are humped bulls that we see in these artifacts, and there are those that resemble rhinos. So, like, what are the animals that we have found evidence of that we can relate to the Harappan civilization, or we know that they were aware of these animals? Because a lot of people are, curious about what were the animals that were there, what kind of transportation system that they used. Because as you said that there were chariots or carts, bullock carts. Like, what was actually going on in there?
There is of course evidence of bull. There is of course cattle, which includes cow also. The regional variety, of course, we don't have an art. See, art is very limited. You see the percentage of artifacts that you get as opposed to a site. Like if you're excavating a 10 by 10 meter trench, you might find like 10. If you excavated like 2 meters, you might find just 2 or 3 figurines. And if you're lucky, only then. If you're lucky, only then. So we can't generalize it, because we have to keep a lot of things in mind while suggesting all of that. Of course, there is cattle, there is rhinoceros, we have evidence of tiger, we have even mongoose, we have antelope, we have other animals also which are indigenous, and region to region, animals have sort of changed. Interestingly, at one of our sites, there on a potsherd, there was a painting of an ostrich. Now, ostrich is not indigenous to India, but somewhere the
Right.
other, the person, the potter must have seen that somewhere. Maybe as an export, as a pride possession by somebody or something. We don't know, but such evidence also tell us that maybe the animals might not be indigenous to that particular landscape or local to that landscape, but they have seen it somewhere else, and then they have drawn it either on the potsherd or created a figurine. We don't have horse. Horse is the only animal that we don't find in the archaeological context. And talking about the transportation, of course, the waterway is one, the river route is one thing, but the land route is very, very important. And if you, I can't open the map of Indus civilization right now, otherwise it would have been much easier for me to discuss. There is a concept of in medieval period called sarais. Sarais, right? Across the north, there have been many sarais. Even today, various
Like
colonies,
rest houses, right?
like rest houses. You have many colonies where there are no sarais, but the name has sarai in it, right? So sarais are basically for people who are moving on foot or moving, from one place to the other. Then they need a place to stay, and these sarais are there for them, which give them food, place to sleep at night, and also security as well. If you look at the map and the spread of Indus sites in across the realm, you would see that across the land route there are small sites between the big settlements, right? There is a possibility there are many these small sites which are also fortified. There's a possibility that these sites also acted as the concept of sarai, where people going from one place to the other, would stop after a certain period of time, and then they move to the other spot the next day. Of course, it takes a lot
How
of
have you how have you arrived at this conjecture or injecture?
Because of the size.
Because of the size, okay.
Because of the size of the sites and the nature of the sites also suggests, because otherwise you can't always rely on waterway for transportation. You have to go inland. And of course, we know that the bullock cart, maximum 10-15 kilometers. After that, it requires to be halted at certain places. Of course, we need to do more testing in that respect. We need to do more experimental studies, but carts probably one of the main form of transportation. And we find a lot of carts with goods, different types of wheels. So we know that the carts were there, which would carry a lot of goods from one place to the other.
Right. So, Disha, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, from the participants. So we will move on to take these questions as much as we can. But the last question from my side would be that again, since last time we know that the script of the Harappan civilization hasn't been deciphered, but then how did transmission of knowledge over generations, over years take place? If there was, do we see that there was a oral tradition? But if so, how how did it go on for so many years without write? Even if they wrote it down, how do we know if it was actually transmission of these technical knowledge or technological?
Initially, when the script, the people started working on the script, there was a school of thought or a group of researchers who suggested that the script could not be spoken, therefore there is no language. It's just a script. It's not even a script. People disregarded it as script. But as we know that there are almost about 600 symbols on different ceilings, the board of Dhola Vera, etc., metal tablets and all. Um, it's not possible to say that these symbols were not part of any language. We know today, like there was this very interesting work done by Rajesh P. N. Rao in 2010, where he basically took these symbols and he worked it with the linguistic and non-linguistic symbols, and then he came to a conclusion that the Harappan symbols basically they were spoken, so they were part of a language that we don't know the language because it's an intangible component. Language is something that you can't basically it's not a tangible component, it's intangible, so you cannot define it or you cannot term it, but we know that the script is spoken. So there is some sort of language which helps in transmission of knowledge from one generation to the other. And also if we look at prehistoric way, there is some primitive form of language, maybe in terms of symbols or something, the form of communication, there has to be some form of communication, otherwise you cannot evolve a culture without having any sort of communication. So from the on the basis of script we can't answer a lot of things because decipher, there are a lot of theories for decipherment, but there is no very confident sort of theory so far. So till that happens there are a lot of loose ends, but we know that, and it's a very interesting work done by Mr. Dr. Rao, which of course suggests that the script was spoken, and it's a very interesting argument that he presents. So we know
So what
that
are
there was
some
some
of
language.
okay, so like what are some of the characteristics of this script, of the Harappan script, and what is making it so difficult to decipher it?
It's because see, initially people thought that till we don't have any bilingual sort of Rosetta Stone type of inscription, it'll be very difficult for us to decipher. So one of the reasons is that because there seems to be no continuity. There is continuity, but we still need to find. A lot of people have tried to link it to to the graffitis, or try to link it to even the tribal signs. So it's basically a symbolic, it's a pictographical sort of script. A lot of people thought that the vertical strokes would be quantitative or numerals or like the defining quantities, but we still don't know because you need to link it to archaeology also, you need to link it to the context. There has to be a lot of work done, but hope that maybe with technological advancements we have more tests and more studies done, and maybe we'll come to a conclusion, or maybe start working on or start testing a hypothesis. There are a lot of theories but no hypothesis has been tested. Also in research work, there has to be some methodology that has not been followed in many work, but some people have been working a lot on this regard. Hopefully we'll find some answers.
So now we'll like to bring in some questions from the participants. So first off, we have Joyjeet Gupta. He's here with us. And Joyjeet, you can turn on your camera so that you can ask a question to Disha. Joyjeet, can you hear me? You need to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. Can you please do that? I think he's not being able to do that. So I'll read out the question that he has sent. Disha, he asks that why does our history only harps on roads, canals made by the Harappan civilization, whereas the Indus Valley civilization was so much more than that? Why are we only talking about the infrastructural advancement that took place during this time? Why aren't we only looking at roads and canals and this infrastructure that they that they made? I think that is the question Jerry wanted to ask.
Thank you so much for the question. It's a very interesting question. I'm always talking about this whenever I'm, interacting with students or I am at an excavation site. It is sort of like a mindset that has been created, and I would like to say that this happened because people keep looking at the West. People keep looking at the ancient civilization of the West, and people keep fixating, or they are sort of obsessed with these big grandeur sort of structures that are excavated in Egypt or Mesopotamia, and then they want to find the same thing, but they want to disregard that for thousands and thousands of years, even till today, people in various parts of the country live in small, mud houses, and even if they have, big bricks, pakka cemented ghar, they will always do mitti ka lipai, on the exteriors and on the roof, because there is a reason behind it. People don't want to acknowledge that, and I'll tell you that maximum number of sites that are Harappan a part of Harappan culture, civilization. There are many rural sites where you don't find these big structures. You do find small structures. Chalcolithic sites have wattle and daub structures, and there is no shame in admitting it. This is a mindset which is also amongst many archaeologists also. They always want to go to and find big structures and fortification and stuff, and they want to skip a lot of things. It is a mindset problem. Until we won't start talking about the true nature of Harappans and also of ancient India, the archaeological landscape of ancient India, and the evidence from various part of the country which go beyond the glorified, Harappan cities, drainage, and etc. etc. Till we don't start communicating this, the problem will not go. And also, why history books have it? Because history books also want to just tell you superficial things and in bits and pieces. How can they call Harappans one of the glorified civilization if they say ki, yahan pe there were small villages as well? They will not. Right. So I think we are still, unfortunately, following the tradition. We need to break that. I hope I answered that question.
I hope so as well, because the next participant we have is Ritesh Ranjan, and he seems to have a lot of questions for you, Disha. So I'd like to ask Ritesh to unmute his mic and turn on his camera. Okay. Hi, Ritesh. You can go on and ask a question.
Thank you so much. So first of all, for this kind of opportunity to directly talk to somebody like Disha. And I follow you on Twitter. We had a bad argument when I started following you. So
we did?
Yeah. But anyway, so I think you did touch upon some of the questions that I had, and I just fired them anyway. Please excuse me for all the naive mindset. I'm somebody just starting to pick up and trying to use the information that people like you are finding. So I may have my own assumptions. I'll just fire them anyway. So I was having the first question about the land commute. What do we know about land commute archaeologically? When you hear about them having a quarry in Afghanistan and doing jewel business, you would like to, given how we live today, you would like to assume that they had some fast transport going to help them. You would like to assume that. So based on that assumption, you think that they would have used some faster transport compared to something like a bullock cart. So just wanted to understand, what do we know about that archaeologically, about the land commute?
It's a very interesting question. And, ever since, there's a very interesting paper by Jonathan Mark Kenoyer. You should read that. I think it's available online. It's on the vehicles of Harappan civilization. So basically, there was this argument that the initial carts also, because of the nature of the wheel, they are heavy vehicles, right? That if it's a solid wheel, therefore it means that it's part of the primitive, style, primitive technology, and the spoked one is more of a lighter vehicle and more advanced technology. This argument sort of goes on, and there is always back and forth. But when you look at the evidence, that is in terms of the type and the variety of wheels that we find across the Harappan realm, and the arguments being put forth, you would know that the carts also that they're using were not that heavy. You look at the tradition, the cart tradition that is still persisting in our country even today in various parts. We still use carts. Today, many of these carts, the wheel has been replaced with the tractor's wheel, but they are basically two-wheel carts.
Yeah.
Right? And they balance it beautifully. And I'll tell you, I was at Sinauli, right? And it's a small village, Sadiqpur Sinauli, and our camp was in one of the khet, very close to our side. Every day in the morning, there will be this young chap, okay? He would have a bullock cart, but that bullock cart he would take it so fast as, our tents will start vibrating.
Right.
And he would stand on the bullock cart and he'll be like going, with full style, and he'll be just taking it across the landscape. And you won't believe, we would look at him, he had a set time, and we would just wait. He became our alarm clock. So what I'm saying is that a lot of time the clues are in the present. The bullock carts have always been an integral part of transportation till the modern transportation came in place. Now, you also placed a question that if they are, importing lapis lazuli or mining lapis lazuli at the Badakhsha, or they are, somebody in Mohenjo-daro want an agate or carnelian necklace from Khambhat, how will that happen? The transportation will happen. So the most sane and most accepted theory amongst archaeologists is that there were small pit stops.
Okay.
So the final product or the raw material or the semi-finished product will not go directly to the place, but will go to the nearest next pit stop, and then we'll go from there. So therefore we say the Harappans had this very nice, very integrated sort of trade matrix.
Network.
Matrix. Yeah, they had a very close integrated matrix. Like for an example, at Dholavira, there is a limestone quarry. The quarry is excavated, and we have an archaeological backing to it. Now, you look at Mohenjo-daro, they have limestone pillar fragments, the same that you find at Dholavira in situ on site. Now, one would wonder how this big, very heavy limestone would have gone all the way to Mohenjo-daro.
Yeah.
One starts questioning. Then you look at the Rann of Kutch, right? When there is no water, the accessibility is very easy. The next stop is right across. You just have to take it, and you just have to leave it to the nearest pit stop, and then it goes across all the way to, across all the way to Mohenjo-daro. So we can't give you a very conclusive answers, but we know that this is something which every archaeologist will agree on, that the land route, of course, in a primitive way, it's very difficult to cross or walk or take the bullock carts on a longer distance. But the way the sites have been spread across the entire landscape, it suggests that they were small pit stops. And then you don't have all big Harappan sites. Right. How many are there big Harappan sites? Yeah. There are 5 major cities, but then the smaller cities are also not much. The large quantity, the maximum quantity is of the small towns, semi-rural towns. Right. So that all point to this particular direction. Of course, it needs to be tested experimentally.
Yeah, so it's a hypothesis.
It is a hypothesis based on few facts.
Right. Can I carry on, ask any more?
Yeah, sure.
I would actually request that you can, if you could keep your question to one, you can ask one more question, because we have other participants also lined up.
You
Okay.
can say, you can ask me later on email me maybe the list of questions.
Oh, please go on and ask your question right, for now.
Okay, so I had five, so I'll just pick one of them. So uh, we talk about a lot of artifacts. So we hear about them in bits and pieces, and they are in museums. How do we get to know about some catalog study of all the artifacts? Is there any online documentation?
Online documentation, one for Harappan, I think one of the best initiative is done, by the creators of Harappa.com. A lot of information is there available now and they keep updating it. Unfortunately, there is no one catalog. There is corpus for seal. For seals, you have a catalog, but I don't think that's updated. However, the corpus has all the important variants of seals. So there are 2 volumes of corpus of Indus seals that has all the seals, but for other things, we don't have one, catalog, sadly. But yeah, the other, apart from that, you have to, of course, go through various reports only. You have to rely on that.
That's what kind of.
And it's very tedious. It's not easy to read a report.
Yeah, for people like us who are interested to know, I mean, we would assume that people like you do the work and somebody like ASI or somebody does a nice catalog. So it's easy to transmit information.
ASI ka apna catalog, they are developing. They are doing digitization. A lot of artifacts that are with ASI, hopefully they will digitize it soon. But the problem is now people don't even publish the reports on time.
Yeah.
So there are certain things you have not seen, but I have seen, which is not published. So I can tell you that, but you have not seen, so you will not understand it. Yeah. So there is this issue that is ongoing. Unfortunately, we don't have any one place where you can find everything. Maybe in the future, somebody can take up initiative and it's a very tedious task. It's very difficult.
Right. All right. So
are there any museums, Disha, that we can go to and visit, and where they located maybe?
The only museum which has some important antiquities is the National Museum. In regards to Harappan civilization, of course, there are site museums and all. But apart from that, no. Lothal Museum has some of the artifacts from Lothal, Dholavira Museum. So site museums are there, which are on the site, but they are not in number, like large number. At Rakhigarhi, we are building, ASI and the state is building a very big museum. Hopefully in a year or 2 years, all the artifacts will be there and people can see that. And there's an MOU between the 2 state agency and the central government, so that whatever been excavated over the years at Rakhigarhi will be there. So site museums, you can visit different sites, but there is, unfortunately, in our country, not many museums are digitized. Yeah. So the publications are not digitized. You can't see. You really can't see.
Right.
Thank you, Ritesh, for your questions. And we'd like to have Jigmik Molia with us. She has questions. I'd ask Jigmik to unmute herself and come on screen.
How strange is it that you find people that you had a call on Twitter? It's nice to meet.
Well, this is an interesting conversation, and I'm glad that a lot of people are actually joining in. Do we have Jigmik with us? Jigmik, can you unmute yourself and turn on your camera? I think I'll have to read out her question as well. So she has a question that when we talk about Harappan religion, we see that many historians try to connect it with Vedic gods, like that of the Pashupati seal, with a figure head that has, the sculpture has a sculpture like the Pashupati. And how do we link it, or are there any other findings to connect Harappan artifacts with the religion of the Vedic age? I think we had touched upon this.
We touched upon that, yeah, we have.
Right.
To sum it up, I can just say 2 lines that, I don't, like, I don't believe in the term Vedic age. For me, the Vedic tradition is something, which is much more important. And although today we know it as a Vedic age in the more evolved form, we don't know how the beginning has happened. Okay, so it's a human thing to worship and attest superpowers to natural elements. It's something which is akin to being Homo sapiens. And that's what happened in the prehistoric and protohistoric society. And the names were given later on in the early historic period. Yeah.
There is also one question by Juhi Dikshit. She's asking that what is the connection between Bhirana and the Harappan civilization? Are they related to each other?
Bhirana, of course, is in Harappan site. It's in Haryana. It's was excavated by Archaeological Survey of India, and it's in Harappan site. Very much a Harappan site. Early Harappan period is dated to about 6000 BCE at that site. Very important site.
I'm not aware where the place is. Where exactly? To say Haryana, right?
Haryana. It's in Haryana.
Right. Okay. So I think there are other questions. One is about the culinary practices of the Harappans. Again, we had talked about this one in the last session. But this question is asking about evidences of consumption of beef that was found. And then when we see that when we move towards the Vedic age, we see that how the cow is placed, or how the cattle is placed above, and the evidences of beef consumption during the Vedic age. Like, what is the relation between the culinary practices of Harappans and the Vedic people? He's asking, I think.
The cattle is always regarded highly in an early farming society or amongst the pastoralists, because cattle gives them a lot of subsistence. Like, they find the subsistence from cattle. You need cattle not only for the products, but also in agriculture, also in various things. So cattle, irrespective of any time period or any age or anything, has always and still is considered regarded very highly. But what you need to understand is that humans, their practices, their eating practices depend on the landscape. The reason why Gujarat is prominently is a vegetarian state goes back to prehistory, goes back to very much the Harappan period, is because of the landscape. And also in places there might be more consumption of other one sort of animal, and there'll be a consumption more of vegetable, one sort of vegetable. Everything has to do with what is available, and eating practice is basically defined by that. So cattle is always regarded regarded very highly in prehistoric society, protohistoric, early historic society. I don't think suddenly cow becomes I think it's only recently that this is a phenomenon, but always cattle is always considered very highly in a household, especially the cow and also bull. You need both. It's not just one.
Of course. So another question by Kshitij Raj is that what do we think about the military organization of the Harappans? Do we have any evidence that they had a standing army or a robust defense other than the fortifications? Because this is one question that I was also curious about, because there is evidence of I think like the brain, the skull with arrowheads in them. I think there was a site where I think this evidence was found. So what do we know about the military organization?
That evidence is from Mehergarh.
Mehergarh, right.
So we don't have any defensive weapons. We do find tools and we do find axe and all, but we don't find weaponry in the literal sense. That is, the tools that are used in fighting in battles. The only evidence that we find of these weapons is from Sinauli. In archaeological context, in burials, there are swords with hilt, there are daggers, which were buried with the dead. So we know that in the ancient time, in ancient period, there was some sort of community which was indulging in war within at the which who are contemporary to Harappans, but they're not Harappans technically. So within Harappans, we don't find such evidence at all. That is the reason why also the later, initially in 1920s, 30s, people very easily said its invasion is what destroyed Harappan cities, because they have no army, they have just, the defense walls and nothing else. We don't know. And of course, I don't want to go and create theories and stories here and say that, this could be the possibility, that could be the possibility. That I think I will just keep it to living room conversation. But what I will say is that in ancient period, contemporary to Harappan civilization, Harappan period, Sinauli is the only site where evidence of weapon and chariots have been found in the stratigraphical context. Stratigraphical context is very important because we can link into stratigraphy, and we have a date also. And the weaponry of Sinauli belongs to what we know as the copper hoard. Now, copper hoard have been found across the Ganga Yamuna Dwar all the way till MP. In large, like these were the hoards which are large number of weapons and other copper tools and utensils and other objects within one hoard.
These are basically boxes with tools and weapons, right? By hoards, you mean?
Yeah, it'll be big size, like a vessel which will have a lot of things in it. It'll be like that, a big hoard, accumulation of a lot of things in one area. That is what hoard is. And initially, when these hoards were a frequent occurrence, and basically these are accidental discoveries, people proposed that these particular swords that were found in these hoards and even harpoons were found in these hoards were not for use, they were ritualistic. So log market nahi kar rahe hai because military and everything is coming with the Aryans, with the migrants. So Indians are very peace loving. They are not doing marpit. They are just using these tools for ritual because they are not usable. But after Sinauli's excavation and with that one evidence of sword with a hilt, we know that these tools were used. The hilt was probably wood, and wood got decomposed. So that's why people thought that they are not usable. But we know now with Sinauli that these tools, these weapons are very much, can actually pierce a person through and through. They are that powerful. So we know that now. So Sinauli is the only site which is contemporary to Harappan civilization.
Right. We also had questions from the last session that people wanted to know about archaeology as a career. So how does someone start with archaeology and pursue it as a profession?
There are different types of archaeologists. Archaeology is multidisciplinary. What I do is field archaeology. Right. So my background is history, and then I pursued a master's in archaeology, and then I have diploma and training and work experience, etc., etc. So I basically dig. But that's not the only thing that you can do. We need people from different professions who can join hands and they can participate with and collaborate with us. We need people, if you are pursuing botany, or if you're pursuing chemistry, zoology, geology, all of these disciplines help us in building or reconstructing the past. Without the help of others, it's very difficult for us to come up with an interpretation of the past. So to have that, we need help of various other disciplines. So if somebody who is a botanist, so he or she can pursue archaeobotany and help us understand the grains and the dietary practices of the past. If somebody who is into zoology can very well study paleozoology or archaeozoology and help us identify animal bones which come out of archaeological context. And similarly, somebody who is working in studying geology can join hands and work with in archaeogeology, archaeozoology, and all of these disciplines, so that we know the landscape, geomorphic changes, and etc., etc. So you don't need history as your subject. You don't need that. You can be from physics, chemistry, bio, anything. But what you need, irrespective of the degree, like besides the degree, beyond the degrees, what you need to be an archaeologist is that you can sustain in different difficult terrains, landscapes, learn give up your comfort once in once in every year. You can endure long hours walking on foot and working in field, because no matter what, that is what it takes to find archaeological evidence and data. So I think history is not the only thing that you should pursue. You can be BSc in physics and still get into archaeology.
So to get into archaeology from all these various fields, do we need a degree in archaeology as well, or like how does that work?
Like, for instance, if you want to get into archaeobotany, you will have to work with an archaeobotanist, because although it is botany, but there is again difference in the general botany and what you do, and when you are dealing with archaeological data, it's different. So you have to then start working with an archaeobotanist, and then start pursuing that, and start similarly with the archaeozoology. So if you have done a bachelor's degree and you want to you are interested in archaeology, you can work with an archaeozoologist and then get an MSc in archaeozoology, or go and study abroad, or work on your master's thesis on some site and something or the other. The key is to basically get in touch with the right people also. But if you want to be a field archaeologist like me, you can do masters in ancient history and archaeology, and then you can pursue for either diploma course or start working with some archaeologists in field. The more experience you get in the field, the better. This is the key. But as a career, of course, one thing I would like to point out, that financially it's not that very lucrative. It looks very glorified, but it's always better to have something else in your hand also, because there are not many job opportunities as of now, be it in the university, be it in ASI, be it in state, be it in museum. I have seen lately there are a lot of students, after doing bachelor's in masters in archaeology, they will opt for another masters in museology, because museums, at least they will get a job, whereas an archaeologist you can't, which is a fact. So I just want to put it out there for people to know that money will always be an issue, but you can always work it out.
So what is the career progression? So you said that with from any discipline, a person can join. And then how do they start and where do they progress? Like you talked about senior archaeologists. So what is the progression that can take place in this career?
There are few institutes in our country which specialize in certain things. Like, for instance, Birbal Sahni School of Paleo Botany, BSIP. They specialize in archaeobotany and also various other paleo, archaeology related studies. So if you are that, so you can always go there. In terms of archaeozoology, the University of Kerala has a lab in archaeozoology. The Deccan College Pune has a very good lab working with archaeozoology. The reason I'm saying this is because we need in future archaeozoologists, archaeobotanists, archaeochemists, people working in geology. We need them because the concentration is very less. There'll be 2 archaeobotanists. There's only one major, main person working in archaeobotany today in our country, and then he has various students. But the concentration and the number of the person and the sites it's like one person. 1:5, 1:6, which is very difficult, and we need to keep developing that. We need these professionals coming with us. Also, forensic archaeology is very, we need more people working in anthropology and working in forensic archaeology also. So yeah, I think instead of going traditional route today in 2023, I would advise a lot of students who are going to do their bachelor's or master's and are interested in archaeology, take a different route. Don't go the traditional route that I have taken or others have taken, because if you take a different route, to take a more science-based route, you will get more opportunities, because we need them more than they need us.
Right.
So I am being selfish right now. Also. Yeah.
So I think
I'm sorry, even engineers, conservation requires that. Restoration and conservation. So if you want to get into conservation is again a very lucrative option. Conservation of structures or art conservation. For that, of course, you need to do MSc in conservation after doing bachelor's in history, or you have to do master's in art history. Unfortunately, in our country, where imagine most of the concentration of built heritage is with ASI, archaeology is not under the eligibility of masters in conservation in our country. So if I'm an archaeologist, I can't pursue conservation. So that's it's something again very political and other things. So you can't do that. So don't opt for archaeology, because then you'll have to do a second master's again. Go straight away for conservation, and conservation is a very lucrative option if you are a heritage lover and you are into history, because it's what the need of the hour to protect the monuments.
I think I think archaeology and history are both moving towards scientific a very scientific approach is being taken, from what I can gather. And thank you so much, Disha, for your inputs. And I hope that all of, not all, of course not, because this is an unending discussion that can take place on this topic and debate. But thank you so much for answering most of the questions that our audience has had. And we got to know from you that how a lot of theories have been dismissed, and how we came to know that there was regionalization that you talked about, that how regional centers, regional areas grew into bigger cities, and then how they grew into the mature Harappan tradition as such. And then we also came to know about how ethnoarchaeology also is helping in understanding our past. And we also got to know how difficult it is for professionals like you to find a middle ground amidst all of the opinions that are, taking place in the country. And thank you so much, Disha. Thank you so much it was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really amazing to be here again and answer all the questions. I really enjoyed all the questions that were put forth and talking about something I love the most. Thank you so much for bringing archaeology to the people. It's a great initiative.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to tell our audience that if you'd like to explore more of such discussions and debates, and you can check our YouTube channel. You can also write to us at team@argumentativeindians.com for any suggestions or feedback that you have for us. And we'd also like everyone to know that our next session is going to happen on the 15th, that is on Sunday, with author Arup Kumar Datta. And make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss a session. And thank you, Disha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.